Isn't it unbelievable how someone can ask the most absurd questions and still expect serious answers? Well, one such question was posed to Donald Trump, and his response was nothing short of ridiculous. "What a stupid question," he said, brushing off the inquiry. But this isn't just a one-off comment. From the very start of his administration, Donald Trump's actions and decisions have been marked by failure after failure. Every move he makes seems to backfire, and his administration's panic is evident. It feels like the people in charge are scrambling, trying to save face while the world watches their disaster unfold. Take, for example, the foreign policy fiasco. As Trump relentlessly attacks the United States' closest allies abroad, one of his own team members, Carolyn Leavitt, couldn't take it anymore. During a press conference about the state of the administration's foreign policy, things are going so poorly that Leavitt decided to literally drag one of Trump's advisors away from the press, fleeing from the scene in the process. And when it's reached this point, one has to wonder, what exactly is going on with Trump's leadership? Is there any hope left for his policies to succeed, or are we witnessing the collapse of everything he's built? Before we dive into that moment of fleeing the press conference, let's take a step back and think about something. Do you still believe Donald Trump when he talks about peace? Do you still believe him when he says he's working for a peaceful resolution in Ukraine? His words might sound convincing at first, but let's break it down. Trump speaks with so much confidence, claiming he has things under control with Russia. Yet, at the same time, he admits that it's getting increasingly difficult to deal with Ukraine. In his eyes, Ukraine doesn't have any cards to play. But why is that? Could it be that he's painting a picture of inevitability, suggesting that Ukraine is bound to lose? And if they have no leverage, what room is there for negotiation? The entire scenario seems strange, doesn't it? Here we have a former president who touts himself as the world's greatest businessman and negotiator. Yet he suggests that Ukraine, despite being under constant attack, has no cards to play. By framing it this way, Trump is stripping Ukraine of any potential leverage in the negotiation process. It's almost as if he's trying to remove any chance of success for Ukraine, and there's a chilling thought that this could be part of a larger, more troubling agenda. It's hard to ignore the fact that Trump's actions in the context of Ukraine seem eerily aligned with Kremlin talking points. In fact, it seems like he's trying to support Putin's interests more than he's advocating for Ukraine's right to self-determination. He might not say it outright, but the underlying message is clear. Trump's idea of a peace deal doesn't seem to have Ukraine's best interests at heart. Could it be that he's actively working to legitimize Putin's aggression and make the invasion seem more palatable on the world stage? This, of course, is only one side of the story. While Trump talks about peace and stopping the bloodshed, his actions don't match his words. If he truly wanted peace, wouldn't he first condemn the very person who started this war? Putin's invasion of Ukraine is the root cause of all the deaths, the destruction, and the chaos that has followed. Yet Trump consistently refuses to condemn him. Instead, he spends time talking about how to negotiate the situation, as if there's a legitimate middle ground between Ukraine's sovereignty and Putin's aggression. It's no surprise, then, that when Carolyn Leavitt witnessed the administration's inability to handle these issues, she decided to act. When it became clear that the foreign policy press conference was heading nowhere, she took it upon herself to pull one of Trump's advisors away from the situation. It's a perfect representation of the larger issues within the administration. From broken promises to hypocrisy, Trump's foreign policy has been a disaster from the start. And it's not just Ukraine that Trump is mishandling. His entire foreign policy has been a string of contradictions. He ran his campaign promising to end the forever wars, but then turned around and continued to support those who were prolonging them. Why? Then, would anyone expect him to answer tough questions about his actions? It's no wonder he's been avoiding the media, as the contradictions in his policies are becoming harder and harder to ignore. Even Bernie Sanders has been outspoken about the flaws in Trump's foreign policy. Sanders has called out the former president for his tendency to make promises and break them without a second thought. His stance on international law is especially concerning, given that Trump has repeatedly sided with authoritarian nations like Russia, North Korea, and Iran. These are the very regimes that Trump claims to oppose, yet he continues to make deals with them, undermining the values that the United States is supposed to stand for. But perhaps the most striking part of Trump's foreign policy is his disturbing habit of spreading lies and misinformation. At one point, he made the outrageous claim that it was Ukraine, not Russia, that started the war. He also went so far as to call Ukraine's president, Volodymyr Zelensky, a dictator, completely disregarding the fact that Zelensky is leading a democratically elected government. This rhetoric is not only false, but it's also dangerous. It plays directly into the hands of authoritarian regimes that want to rewrite history and shift the blame onto others. In the midst of all this, it's crucial to remember who Vladimir Putin really is. Putin is a man who has spent his entire career crushing any movement toward democracy in Russia. After the Cold War, Russia had the potential to become a democratic nation, but Putin made sure that didn't happen. He's a man who steals elections, suppresses political dissent, and controls the media to maintain his stranglehold on power. His wealth is built on the suffering of the Russian people, as he allows oligarchs to rob the nation blind while he consolidates power for himself. It's no secret that Putin's leadership has led to a series of catastrophic events, the most recent being the invasion of Ukraine. Since the war began, over 1 million people have been killed or injured, and countless others have been displaced. The international community has condemned Putin for his actions, with the International Criminal Court issuing an arrest warrant for him as a war criminal. Yet Trump continues to downplay the severity of Putin's actions, going so far as to suggest that the war could be easier to resolve with Russia. This is the man Trump is aligning himself with, and it's deeply troubling. If Trump were truly concerned about peace, he would have done everything in his power to end the war and stop the killing. Instead, he's been more focused on protecting Putin's interests and making deals that only benefit the Russian government. The question remains, when will Trump stop pretending that his actions are about peace? When will he finally take responsibility for the consequences of his support for Putin? Until then, the world continues to watch in disbelief as his foreign policy falls apart, one disastrous decision at a time. The tragic reality is that Trump's attempts at diplomacy are not only ineffective, they're actively making things worse.